What's up? I'm Jason, the head coach of Strength Running and the host of the Strength Running podcast. I just recently published an episode of the podcast about running myths or misconceptions that a lot of runners have about the training process, about certain ideas in exercise physiology. And I want to highlight 3 of the biggest here in this video today, because I think if you can move away from believing these myths and internalize the right mental models and frameworks for thinking about training, for thinking about racing and the art of improvement, you're going to be a much better runner for it. Now, our first myth that I want to talk about today is about static stretching. First of all, a lot of runners really love static stretching, and I don't want you to get the impression that I'm against static stretching, that you can never do static stretching, because you can. It's all about when you do it. But first, let's talk about this a little more. Why is it a myth to believe that static stretching is something that you should do before you go running? Well, first of all, it doesn't actually do what a warm-up should do. What should a warm-up do? It should warm you up. It should literally make you warmer by increasing your heart rate, your respiration, opening up new capillaries in your extremities, lubricating your joints, and increasing your range of motion. Static stretching doesn't really do any of that. While it can increase your range of motion, we are not gymnasts, we're runners. So we don't need to really focus too heavily on how flexible we are. We just need to make sure that before we go running, we are metabolically primed for that activity. Now, the other big reason why we shouldn't stretch before we go running is that it actually increases our injury risk, which is very counterintuitive to a lot of runners because, me included, I grew up on a cross-country team in high school, all in a circle doing a bunch of static stretching before every single run. This was the conventional wisdom of the day. And if you're someone who started running maybe, let's say, year 2000 or earlier, you probably were taught that static stretching is going to help you prevent injuries. But that's actually not the case. In fact, there was this great CDC study, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that looked at over 300 different studies on static stretching. And they concluded that static stretching will not prevent injuries. So, if you're wondering what should you do to stay healthy and get ready for your next run, the best thing you can do is a dynamic warm-up that includes forms of dynamic stretching and some light strength exercises that will actually accomplish the goals of that warm-up process. Myth number 2 that a lot of runners believe is that getting a running coach is only for the pro runners. Now, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that might have been the case, but with the internet, now online coaching is available for everyone. Now, full disclosure here, I am an online running coach. So I work with a lot of different athletes in a lot of different capacities. And so I certainly have a vested interest in convincing runners that they should get a coach. Now, let's first step back for a second and talk about who coaching is for and who coaching is not for, because there are certain types of athletes that would really benefit from a coach and some kinds of athletes who probably don't need a coach. Now, I think that whenever you are starting something new, it is in your best interest to get a coach, to get guidance or advice to help you start out on the right foot, to avoid a lot of beginner mistakes, and really build the habits and consistency that will carry you well into whatever new endeavor you're starting. So if it's the case of running, a good running coach is going to help you steer clear of a lot of training mistakes and training errors that will increase your injury risk and just make running less fun, make running less productive for you, and make running harder than it has to be. A coach will help you avoid all that. Now, the other type of runner who would really benefit from a coach is the performance-oriented runner. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're super fast or, you're running 2:30 in the marathon or anything like that, but it does mean that you want to improve. You want to get better and you want to achieve some goal that you haven't achieved before. Maybe that's running your first marathon. Maybe that's running your first ultra marathon, breaking 4 hours in the marathon, qualifying for Boston, a sub 20 or sub 25 minute 5K, whatever the goal might be. If you are a goal-oriented, performance-oriented runner who wants to improve, then a running coach is a great option for you. Now, of course, there are some runners who probably shouldn't get an online running coach. Unfortunately, I've had some experiences where, if the athlete just isn't good at digital communication, if they have trouble communicating via email or explaining how they did a workout or talking through how you feel during a long run, a race, or a workout, it's just going to be more challenging for the coach to work with you. So make sure that you're very comfortable communicating everything about your running and your training to your coach. And if you're really good, if you are someone who's potentially chasing an Olympic trials qualifier, or if you have qualified for the trials, if you are, in other words, a relatively elite, somewhat professional runner, an online running coach probably isn't for you. I think it's best to be with someone in person if you are that advanced, because that coach really needs to see you. They need to see how you respond to stress, how you respond to fatigue, and really get to know you on a much more personal level to help you get to that world stage where you probably want to be. Now, our final myth is all about dieting, because I get a lot of folks asking me if running is the best way to lose fat. So this is an interesting myth to believe. Is running one of the best ways to lose fat? Well, there's a lot of caveats here. Caveat number one is that you can't just focus on burning fat. Your body can't do that. It will focus on burning calories, which will help you lose weight, which has a certain fat loss component to it, but you can't spot reduce fat or muscle or anything else. Just like you can't only reduce maybe, any weight that you have on a certain area of your body. It doesn't really work like that. So now the question becomes, well, is running one of the best ways to lose weight? And I will say that if the question was, is running one of the best forms of exercise to lose weight, then I will give an emphatic yes. Minute for minute, running is one of the most calorie intensive burning forms of exercise that you can do. Other things like high intensity cycling, rowing are also great at burning a tremendous number of calories. Now, it's not actually the best way to lose weight though. The best way to lose weight is to simply go on a diet. What you eat, your nutrition, your diet is much more important from a weight loss perspective than the exercise that you're doing. So if your goals are weight loss, then I think a combination of some running and a good diet where you're focusing on real food, whole foods, you're not eating too little, you're certainly doing it in a sustainable long-term way. I think that is the best combination for weight loss. But don't think that you can outrun a bad diet by running a lot. Some people can certainly do that, and if you're in your early 20s, you probably can do that. But if you're like the rest of us, your body simply doesn't work like that. And I would certainly encourage you to talk to a dietitian, get your nutrition and diet in order before you embark on a running journey. Because the number one thing that's important for weight loss is your diet. Now, I'm curious, what running ideas or maxims or principles have you heard over and over again, but you're starting to think they are not actually true? Leave me a comment under this video, and if you want to hear the other 7 myths and you'd like to hear me debunk them, go to episode 169 of the Strength Running Podcast. There's 10 running myths included. I think you're gonna really enjoy these. I love this kind of Mythbusters episode, and if you enjoyed it, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast. Minute for minute, running is one of the best we're gonna get through this.